We were going to save a lot of the successor talk for the end, but I think this is the perfect segue because a lot of people, and you hear it on Field of 68 with Devo on the scorers table, a lot of guys hop on that show and say, Hop is the reason I stayed. I was ready to bolt. I mean, you heard the story with Dion Waiters. He was at the bus station ready to go, and Hop was the one that brought him back. Is he the best man for the job whenever Jim Boeheim decides to hang it up?
I think so. I do. I love Hop, though. Like, I'm the biggest Hop guy ever. Now, it was a disaster last year at Washington.
Yeah.
An absolute disaster. You can't defend that. And even the year before, I was up there in January, right before Quade Green got ruled ineligible. And they tanked at the end. I saw them lose to a bad UCLA team that day. Bad. So Hop's got to turn it a little bit this year. Like, I don't think he had a good staff. He's flipped it over. We'll see how it does. But he can't have another year like this, because if he has another year like this, like, they owe him a lot of money. I think they owed him like 10 million after last year. So they weren't going to make a move. But after this year, if they pull another, last place finish in the Pac-12, he may not have a job. Like I don't know how he can get it. And you got to figure Boeheim. I mean, I would guess, and again, I don't know this, but what, he's 75 turning 76 this year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Like, both sons are gone after this year. Like, it just lines up, and you got name, image, likeness. It's going to be a train wreck. He's going to be so frustrated by all that crap. So, like, I'd just be shocked if Jim Boeheim goes more than another year. I just would.
Really?
Again, I'm guessing. I don't have
yeah,
inside info or anything like that, but like, it all lines up for him in a year to say, I'm done. And if he does, it's like, okay, you got GMAC, you got Red, you got Hop. Who am I forgetting about?
That's pretty much the
basically
list.
In-house, yeah. Unless you want to go
Anybody
out
else
of
that you can think of?
Not really
That's it.
in-house. I mean, and that gets down to the question of like what UNC just had, or even Arizona. They're debating, should they go in the family or outside the family? And I don't even know. I mean, I think the in-house candidates are decent as is.
Yeah.
And then it's also like, how much weight does the Syracuse job have to the out-of-house candidates anyways? Like, who are you going to bring in at this point that knows that you're following in Jim Boeheim's footsteps and so on and so forth?
Yeah. And again, I think some of the guys that were hired this past cycle, assistant coaches, would help if you wanted to go the GMAC or Red route. You could do it, and you're not like going out there on a limb. It happened with several guys at the high major level. And again, the difference is you've got a Syracuse guy who's been there forever as the coach, and you've got a Syracuse guy as your AD. So I just don't see any other way. And by the way, John Wildhack was once my boss, by the way, at ESPN. I don't know if you guys knew that. He was actually my boss, which is kind of cool. He was a really good boss. So I don't see them going outside unless they had to, which I don't think you have to, because I think if Hop does well enough this year, it's an easy call. If Hop doesn't do well enough, all right, then you got to choose between probably GMAC and Red. I don't know how you do that one. I mean, that's not going to be an easy one for Wildhack to pull, and who you pick out of those two. I don't know how you do it.
So in the case of with Mike Hopkins, if he does have success this season, do you feel like he would want the job? Because he's talked about wanting to stay out west a number of times.
Listen, I would have said 2 years ago no, but with the fact of how they've struggled and kind of how tenuous his job is, then I would say yes. Like, I think he's got to reevaluate it. I do think, listen, Hop, years ago, I tried to get him the Boston College job. I'll tell you guys that. I did. I tried like hell before they hired Jim Christian. And
he would have killed it there.
Crazy he didn't get it. Like, the dumbest thing ever. Brad Bates, former AD, good guy, but like overthought it. Completely overthought it. Like, Hop, I mean, people don't realize also how plugged in Hop is to New England basketball recruiting. Like, people don't get how much prep school coaches want to help Mike Hopkins out. So it's harder to help him out at Washington than it is if he's at Syracuse. Like, he's going to get dudes. He is going to get players. And yeah, I think it should be a no-brainer for him to go back to Syracuse. And I think it's a whole lot more of a no-brainer right now than it would have been 2 years ago. I think if this had happened 2 years ago, he probably would have said no.
And I'm glad you brought that up with the whole New England area, because a lot of people who shoot at Tim and I and say, we don't want Hop because look at the last 2 years at Washington. I say, it's a lot tougher to get a kid to go all the way across the country. And I get you had a parking spot at Isaiah Stewart's high school or whatever, but when you're that tied, it's easy. But when you're all the way across the country and you don't have that base, it's a lot tougher. And that's why I think if he came back to Syracuse, it would be a much easier job for him. And if he went to Boston College initially, it would have been a much easier job. And we might even see Boston College be in the top, 5-6 teams in the ACC right now.
Trust me, they would have been good. Like, I don't know if they would have been like great, but they would have been relevant. That's all I'm saying is that was a better first job, I think, for Hop than Washington, even though he's from LA. I get it all. Like, he's from California, Southern California, but I just feel like his roots are more here in terms of recruiting. He's been here. He knows the lay of the land here. And again, I'm telling you, a big part of it, guys, is staff. And his staff you don't hire two former head coaches on your staff, Dave Rice and Cameron Dollar. And Will Conroy is okay, but he's not a big time recruiter. So, and I also feel like with Hop, like he's going to come to Syracuse, come back different, learning things. Like, he made mistakes out at Washington. Like, it would benefit Syracuse, the fact that he has not done well in a way at Washington, because now he'll come back and say, all right, you know what? Like Quade Green, good example, guys. He flunked, like basically flunked out. Like, he was academically ineligible. My whole deal on that is like, how do you let that happen? Like, you can't let that happen. He came into college at Kentucky as kind of an academic question mark a little bit. So like, you knew when you were getting him at Washington, he was going to have some issues potentially academically. You can't allow that to happen. So like that's something that I think if he comes back to Syracuse, something different is in place to make sure that doesn't happen again to anybody.
Yeah. And look, you said it, last year was a disaster for them, but he's not that far removed from winning Pac-12 Coach of the Year. And they were pretty good initially. I think he could get it done if he came for a lot of the recruiting reasons. And honestly, I think a big reason why Syracuse has struggled to recruit, you could point to the sanctions a little bit, but I think it's more just losing Hop and losing those ties to the Northeast. Do you think that's been a big part of it too?
No doubt. No question. But they still have talent. It's not like they haven't gotten talent. I mean, let's face it. Like, again, they've gotten pretty good talent. It's not, what they've been missing to me is just that big in the zone. Like, if they had a pro big in the zone the last couple of years, wouldn't we be talking a little bit differently about them or no? I mean, I guess
agree.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're probably missing a high level point. Like Jalen Carey obviously didn't. That was the one. I remember sitting with Boeheim at ACC Media Day a couple of years ago. And it was the one where he pissed off LeBron and Rich Paul.
Oh, with Baisley. Yeah.
Yes, with the Baisley comments. Yeah, and Rich Paul was not very happy at me for putting that out there. I'm like, dude, don't shoot the messenger. I didn't, whatever. But we were talking, and he thought Jalen Carey was going to be the guy, like a lot of people did. So they haven't had like a high level point guard or a high level big in the last few years. So it's hard to win without that. So I think those are the things that have been missing to me. But they've had talent. It's just not like, I guess maybe Syracuse talent, certainly not a guy like that dude.
Yep. Number 44. But when you talk about the center position, a lot of the offense that Syracuse runs is not run through the center. I mean, you look at some of the guys that they've brought in, and is that a big reason why they can't get this guy? And is this going to be one of those things where, okay, we might not see them get a really quality big until a new coach is brought in?
Well, you don't need it offensively. I don't think you need it anymore. You just need a guy that can protect the rim, that can run the court, that can finish, right? You see,
but from the kid's standpoint, why would you want to go to Syracuse if you're not involved in the offense?
Yeah, good point. I mean, good point. You're right. Like, who have we seen in the last 10 years as a big that could really score the ball that they were getting the ball to? Not many, right? I mean, not many. So, yeah, I mean, you're probably right. In this offense, you kind of have to, and maybe it's just they've got to adapt a little bit more as much as anything. But again, it's more of a guards game too.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it is ultimately, like, to me, the best teams are the ones with really good guards, really good wings, and get a rim protector at the big man spot who can alter, block shots, and run the hell out of the court and finish. Like, you have that, and you have you got to have 4 other dudes that can score, that are skilled. But I think there's no, to me, I'm watching like the Celtics, with like Robert Williams when he's ever healthy. And that's all you want right now. I mean, yeah. Like, how many great bigs are there right now in anywhere? There just aren't.
Yeah, I think that's what Boeheim argues too, when people kind of go at him for not getting the center position in particular. What do you make of just the state of the program right now? I know that's kind of a loaded question, but you've followed college hoops forever. You've seen many different phases of Syracuse. They had kind of what people called the glory years from 2009 to 2014, where they were a 1 seed, 3 seed, great regular seasons. Now it's kind of bubble, and then you make a nice run in the tournament. And what does that mean to a recruit and just where they stack up as a program right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately they're not where people would like them to be at Syracuse, which is kind of fighting for ACC titles, regular season titles. That's kind of been given to Tony Bennett most years at Virginia. Again, I feel like part of it is just the talent level isn't overall. They haven't had that star, I guess, is what they've been missing, right? Like, they've had good players, but they just haven't had that star in recent years. And it's hard to, I want to say, on one hand, it's hard to win without that star, but the other way to do it is just keep guys and be older. You got to be older these days. The teams that win it all are older, and there's continuity within the program. Look at Baylor, right? Baylor had most of its team back from a year ago. Gonzaga had a good portion of its team back. The Villanova teams that have won it all were older. The Carolina team that won it all was older. So you got to find a way to stay older. Well, everybody's going to be older now because of the transfer, right? Like, so everybody's going to be, you lose a guy, you're going to bring in another guy through the portal. And most coaches have told me they're not really, unless it's a surefire guy coming out of high school, they're not taking chances on some guy outside the top 100. For the most part, they'll just get a transfer that can help them win now. So I think, that's kind of where we're at right now, as much as anything. I think the program, again, if I'm a Syracuse fan, you want more. You want to be fighting Duke, Virginia, Louisville. Like Louisville didn't make the tournament last year, so that's probably a bad example for this year. But you got to be fighting for the top 3 or 4 spots every year in the ACC regular season, and not just rely on, like, all right, we're going to be mediocre, and then we're going to turn it on every year in the tournament, because you can't always do that.
You mentioned how they haven't had that star. Can Buddy Boeheim be that star and be the best player on a team that gets to the Elite Eight, Final Four?
He'd be the best player, but there's got to be other guys right there with him. Like, he can't be like head and shoulders above everybody. Like, he needs help. And I like the Cole Swider addition. I really do. I mean, I've seen Cole for years, and I think with confidence, with more reps, and giving him the green light, I mean, he's an elite level shooter. So now you're going to have dudes that can really, really shoot the ball. The big question for me is, right, like, Joe at the point guard spot. Like, that's the big question for me. Like, can he be a high level point guard? Can he be one of the best point guards in the ACC? If he can, then you got a chance. If he can't, to me, I always start there. Like, when I start looking at teams that could potentially make a Final Four, the first thing I say is, like, okay, point guard. If they don't have one, they have no shot of going to the Final Four. No shot of winning at all. And probably very little shot of going to the Final Four. So for me, it starts at the point guard spot. And to me, it's okay.
So before we let you go here, last question. Who is your favorite Syracuse basketball player of all time? And why is it Derrick Coleman, basically, is the question.
He was, man, like I grew up when Derrick Coleman was playing, and like he was a MFer. Like that's the only way to describe that dude. He was so talented. He knew it. He didn't give a shit. He would talk crap. He would, like the scowl. But man, like he was so talented, so tough. I don't like I mean, again, I grew up, he might have been my favorite player, period. Like not my favorite Syracuse player. He might have been my favorite college player ever. Like he was, and then when you hear him on Devo's pod, you just like, and I was on, I listened in on that one, which was phenomenal for me because I was just like loving it. Absolutely love him. Because the dude he'll say anything too. Like there's no filter. He doesn't care. And man, he was a killer on the court, an absolute killer on the court. He should have been he honestly should have been an NBA Hall of Famer. Like that's how talented he was.